First, it's crawling and building an index of keywords and websites that are associated with those keywords. Google has a big master set index, actually a whole lot of indexes that it uses to rank websites when someone types in a search term. Its second function is to provide a user, the person who is searching, with a ranked list of those websites that Google decides is the most relevant. So imagine internet as a subway, right? The search engine needs a way to crawl basically this entire subway system in the city, right? And find all the stops along the way. So the best path available is links within the website and links to the website from a bunch of other sources. Search engine also is trying to return results to a user that is the most helpful to them. No matter what you're typing in, Google wants to try and give you a set of results that is the best possible set of results. Google's ability to do this more effectively than Yahoo with Bing and Ask Jeeves, etc., is what makes Google the household name that it is. If Google was not as effective at doing this as Bing and Yahoo, for instance, then more people would be using Bing and Yahoo. So not only do they care about the relevancy and the usefulness of those web pages, they'll also rank those results based on popularity of the websites that are searching the information. And by popularity, I mean number of people who go to that website, the percentage, the click-through rate when it shows up on the organic results, so the percentage chance that somebody actually clicks on it, and the number of links to your website from third parties. Why, pose a question to you guys, why do you think it's necessary for Google to return results that are based not just on what Google feels is most useful and relevant to you, but also based on the general popularity of your site in the World Wide Web in its keyword category? What do you think? Yes?
Popularity maybe implies that it's something that's either had a lot of marketing presence, where relevancy might not necessarily have that same kind of promotion, but still be something that's got a lot of substance to it.
Yes, definitely.
There's millions of websites out there that are low quality, so Google wants to rank and show you the highest quality ones that will be most relevant to the majority.
Is quality, is there a subjective nature to quality?
Yes.
What I say is quality versus what you say is quality versus what a million other people in the world say is quality. There's a little bit of subjective nature to that a machine can't always tell. There's another, yeah.
I was just going to say it's almost similar to social proof, saying that if a lot of users are going to this website, that means it must have substantial value.
Yeah. It is possible for someone with enough money to build a website that has better SEO on the products that Target sells than Target does. Enough time and enough money, right? So Google considers not just the relevancy by the Google rules of SEO, they also consider what everyone else on the web who's going to sites like these is doing, basically. So not only just by people who go to this site, so the number of monthly visitors, but also when it actually shows up in organic results, what are people doing, right? Google's not able to determine if the sentence that exists, let me use an example here. Google's not able to determine if the sentence that you write for organic search, we'll go back to our motorcycle insurance example. If the copy that shows up right here, they can see if the word motorcycle insurance shows up. But how does Google determine if it's influential to you as a human being? Or more importantly, if it's influential to the millions of people who are searching for this, as opposed to the copy that Nationwide writes. A machine can't do that, right? It can look for keywords, it can look for phrases, it can make sure that you're not writing it over and over and over again so that you're being spammy, we'll get to that. But it doesn't know based on our psychology and the way that we interpret copywriting and connect some value to it, right? So Google relies on that sort of social proof, that secondary data. The history of the website's important, but also the way that people, and the number of users, but also the way that people interact with it. And theoretically, if a lot of valid, high-quality third-party websites are linked either because of news stories or because of reviews, right? Think of like a restaurant, like a popular restaurant in Las Vegas. If every other restaurant review site is linking to them and putting them in top 10 lists, that could be a signal to Google that, oh yeah, this is a pretty good restaurant. If someone's gonna type in top 10 restaurants in Las Vegas, there's a reason why maybe this website would show up, right? Or an article about this website would show up. So, but more on this as we go, because we'll get to the link building strategy. So, I said something about how Google is ranking keywords, or excuse me, is ranking websites into indexes. So, the way it works is Google doesn't have one big master list of websites where they're all ranked from 1 to a billion, or however many websites are out there, right? That would be cumbersome. It wouldn't really tell Google how to rank websites when someone does a search. It would just say, if someone said, hey, what are the top million websites in order? And there's a lot of factors that you could go across, but that's sort of subjective to what makes a best website. So instead, what Google does to improve its efficiency internally as well as return results in a microsecond, right, is it looks at keyword categories. So for every major keyword category, there's its own index which is a ranked list of websites that best fit that keyword category. So for instance, dog. There's an entire list of websites that are ranked based on the relevance popularity of the term dog. And if you type in the word dog into Google search, Google has instantaneous set of results for you that it feels are best for keyword dog. Motorcycle insurance, football, whatever it is that you type in, Google has a set of answers for you. Now, those results can change from time to time depending on how long your website's been around, if you have additional traffic, if more third-party websites are linking to you, showing perhaps a little bit more relevance or more popularity, right? And also where you're searching from, right? If you're looking for local attorneys and you're searching in Kansas, you're gonna get a different set of results than if you hop on a plane and go to Los Angeles and type in local attorneys, right? So Google's smart enough to know when to return results based on geography as well, depending on the types of terms you're looking at. It's also important for us to consider how and why people interact with search engines. Over time, you could say that search has gotten smarter. The quote we use very often is built for the user, not for a search engine, because the rules of what applies for search engines changes over time. There are certain features and certain things that you can do that are sort of evergreen, but just following the latest and greatest techniques on Google and where to put a certain keyword is not always going to be the best strategy. At the end of the day, always consider why someone is looking for, why and how someone's looking for what the type of product or service that you have to offer, and base your SEO strategy around them while following some of the rules of Google. So that said, we want to think about 3 of the different ways that people do searches to begin with. Now, there's a whole bunch of different ways to be classified. This is just the way that I like to classify it, and the way that a company called Moz, that is a big SEO vendor, likes to do it, right? We could basically throw them into 3 buckets. A transactional query, such as I want to do something like buy a plane ticket or listen to a song. Things that we're trying to find out, like the name of a band or the best restaurant in New York City. Or I want to go to a particular place on the web, like Facebook or NFL homepage, et cetera, or pay your insurance quote or your insurance premium online. So with transactional queries, right, basically we want to make sure that a user can get to the website and do what they want to do pretty effectively. With informational queries, we want to try and provide the information in the most efficient manner possible. Common sense. And with navigational queries, right, the user wants to get to a specific page in your site, so making sure to identify those pages pretty clearly, and I'll show you how to do that as well. So there's a lot of ways that Google is learning from user search behavior. They learn a lot faster than we do as humans because they have some of the smartest engineers in the world working there, and because they build the algorithms to always be calculating and analyzing data based on what people are doing, what they're typing in, et cetera, right? So there's sort of 8 key steps that happen in the process of someone actually doing a search and arriving at where they want to go, right? Person identifies that they have some kind of need. I want to get a quote on my car insurance tomorrow, right, or today. So you formulate whatever search query that you have around that. This has changed over time, right? So if you typed in lowest cost auto insurance company like 15 years ago or whenever search started, right? You wouldn't get the same results that you get today, right? One, because there's a lot more insurance companies out there today who are competing. And second, because Google is able to better take a long string of words and formulate an appropriate set of search results for you. Now, you may not write those words in all the same order. You may have misspellings, right? You may completely jumble up all those words like a lot of people do. I'll show you guys in a future session what some people's actual searches look like, because it's amazing. Sometimes they're like 2 big long sentences, like a small paragraph, and sometimes they're just like 1 or 2 words or 5 or 6 words or whatever. But the random combination of ways that people type in words to formulate a search, sometimes you would look at them and be like, I don't really know what this person's looking for. So one of the important things to consider is that every month, about 60% of all the searches that are done, 60% of these searches that are done every month have never been done before, ever. 60%. It's different month to month. It's usually between 50 and 70. I like to go with 60 or so. That's 60% of all searches done every month have never been done before. It's a unique set of letters and words and combination of words for people to find what they're looking for. And I see this. I see this when I'm doing search advertising. I'll show you guys on Thursday what that looks like and how there's so many different types of searches people do to find a specific type of product or service. And so Google is not able to just put the same results for every single one of those searches. It has to use some combination of learning, basically what it's learned from the various searches, and try and categorize that into one of its many index of keywords or terms in best websites. So it's constantly searching its database, right? Anyway, so user formulates a search query, and there's about a 6% chance that it's never been done before, right? They type in that search query, right? Whatever it is, their 2 sentences, their paragraph, their 5 words, whatever it is that they're looking for. In fact, Google actually presents you with options that other people search for. And sometimes when we start to type in and Google autofills and the rest of it, we find some really strange things. And yes, those are things that people are actually looking for, right? So when you hit enter, you click search, right? The set of search results comes up to you. And you don't click on all of them, right? We look for the one that best fits our needs. It's some combination of what's in the headline, what's in that body copy there, what the URL says, we recognize the brand name. There's all sorts of different reasons why we might choose to click on something, right? We scan that site for a solution, and if we don't find that solution, what do? We go back and we check the next one, and we can repeat that process until we find what we're looking for, or we give up and throw our hands up in the air, right? So consider the fact that because every single click that you do is logged by Google, they're able to continuously learn about your behavior, right? So if 10 people on Google search click on that for, let's say like 10 out of 15 searches happen, right? And out of those 10 searches, out of the 15 searches, 10 people click on that first result. And 9 of those 10 people who clicked on that first result bounced because it wasn't useful to them. What do you think that tells Google? That first result is not really that effective. If I go to search and 15 people do a search for motorcycle insurance, 10 people click on Progressive, 9 people immediately bounce within a few seconds, right? It's going to tell Google, maybe Progressive is not that useful to people who are looking for motorcycle insurance, right? That is learned behavior. It's not just Google looking at the website and determining whether or not it's a good website or not for that experience. So imagine this happening billions and billions and billions of times. Of course, Google's able to start better determining which sites can go in which order. So we should care, because search processing, basically the way that Google looks at your site, plus the way that users search, basically determines what sites get listed and ranked in what order, right? You obviously want your site to be listed and found more often, and you want your site search results to get users to click on it more, meaning when someone sees your website in the search results, you want to stand out from other companies in a way that better solves your users' needs. So there are some core things that you can do to make sure that Google doesn't hate you. In that sense, making yourself less searchable. So Google doesn't really change its rules. Google's like that person in a relationship that's not willing to compromise. Google is never willing to compromise. You play by Google's rules, or your relationship with Google ends, basically. So, example, there's a situation where someone says, I have a problem with getting my website found. If you've built a huge flash site for Juggling Pandas, and I'm not showing up anywhere on Google for my website on Juggling Pandas. Does anyone know why Google may not be showing your website for Juggling Pandas? Yes.
I don't think the search index is JavaScript.
What's that?
You know JavaScript, like Flash,
Yeah.
doesn't.
Google doesn't like Flash. There's a reason for this. So, in order for Google to know what sort of website you have and be able to scan your site and determine does this website fit within the general scheme of what the user is searching for, it's looking for indexable content. Basically content that it can scan, or that it can use its bots to scan, and then put into the index of sites that are related to it. In order to do this, you need words on your page. What does Flash do? It's an animation type. It's coded in, but it's an animation type that is like, almost like from a user perspective, watching a video, right? Google doesn't have a way of scanning a video and pulling out words. Just like Google doesn't have an easy way of scanning an image, a Photoshop image with the words inside that image file and pulling it out. What Google has to do is for it to be able to scan styled text, right? I can scan this text, it's not part of the picture, which means that Google can see it. I can scan this text, which means that Google can see it. If this guy's helmet said motorcycle insurance and it was written into the picture, I wouldn't be able to see it. I'm clicking and dragging, and it's not like I can highlight anything on here. So every word on this page, if they want this to be scanned by Google and indexed for SEO purposes, can be highlighted. If I were to go to the source code of this, view source, basically, I'm going to see, like that first motorcycle insurance that I highlighted, that header, I'm going to be able to see it as regular text that's styled. There's another way of seeing it. Actually, you know what? I'll show it to you later. There's also a way for me to see what progressive or guide code looks like without the styling. But basically, all of this is all of this website here is just text and images. But when you strip out all the styling of it, this is just plain text here. Google can scan this, and therefore it's able to list. If that website on Juggling Pandas, right, had text that was on the page that you could scan, that would be a signal to Google on what the page is actually about. Okay. So, other things that can be problematic for Google to scan your site and actually know what your site is about. So if you have non-text content, like Flash files, images, photos, video, audio that plays, right, Google's not going to be able to determine from those things what your site's about and not be able to list you with the right searches. If there's a form or a login, right, if your content is hidden behind login forms, you have to type something in and enter, submit a file, or submit your entry, or sign in for a service, Google's also not going to try and do that. They're not going to try and get past forms to do that, right?
Wait, sorry, does that mean like when you log into your Amazon account, you can't get past that?
Yeah, whatever's inside your Amazon account, Google can't see. Whatever's whatever's hidden in a non-public view on Facebook, if you have to be logged in to see Facebook content, they can't see that. If you have a website with 1,000 pages, and the only way to see those 1,000 pages of rich, wonderful, keyword-driven content is to sign in, Google will not ever see it, unless you can get there some other way. So consider that. Duplicate pages. Google wants to see original content. There are certain situations where you might have a duplicate version of your site or multiple URL versions, et cetera. If you have two different pages with the exact same content, Google's going to recognize that you can see both websites live, and you can be penalized for that. The robot.txt file is part of the way that tells Google how to, it tells Google bots and other bots on whether it can scan and index your site. There are things in the code that can sometimes block that. More just for your web developer to know how, and making sure that it's allowing it to be scanned. We'll get to Search Console and talk a little bit about that though. Yes?
For pages, does that mean like the .org, .net, .com? Is that considered?
Yeah, if you set up an exact duplicate of your site, like a .net version, and you came up with a .com and it was the exact same site, Google will recognize this duplicate content, and it might penalize one or both sites for that. So generally, you don't want to have the same exact content on every page of your site or on multiple sites, right? Because you can imagine some people would build the same website on multiple domains to try and sort of game the system. And so they want you to have one site with original content. Good question. Yeah.
So, like, for example, if you look at a website on .com, I mean, there is a limitation for visitors who could be on this website, right? Let's say that you get like 100,000 people, and then if there are multiple visiting your website, then you need to have another website. They are exactly the same, like when you were doing another using a .net.
Why wouldn't more than just following the example? Why would more than 100,000 people not be able to do it without
I
that?
don't know, I'm asking if, is there a limitation on the visitors of the website?
Probably not. Not if it's a typical like hosting setup that can handle multiple visitors. Sometimes it's like Facebook, for instance, if they one of their servers went down or something and they couldn't handle a certain amount of traffic, but that's an in-house. That's like their own server that they're managing that traffic off of. But in most cases, there's not going to be like a limit to the number of people who can go to the site, and you wouldn't have a reason to, like for instance, Facebook wouldn't do like a Facebook.net because they have too much traffic going to them, right? You would always do Facebook.com. They would just make sure that you can get more traffic to that site. So the point is that people would set up multiple versions of their site to try and, let's say, they wanted to have their website as all 10 of those spots on Google Organic Search, right? This rule prevents that basically. So having a website with the same exact content and looking the exact same on 10 different versions would get you kind of accident. So that's for your search results. Second situation. I built an awesome site with tons of pages about my products, but nobody's finding it and Google is not ranking me for terms. My site is for selling work-driven seated apparatuses. Why wouldn't I show up for terms like office chairs? Someone searches for office chairs, and I'm selling work-driven seated apparatuses that look like office chairs. Why don't I show up in the search results?
People want to search for seating apparatus.
Right. Google doesn't know that I believe that work-driven seated apparatuses are the same as office chairs. This sounds like a really silly example until you realize that there's a lot of companies out there who do some form of this, who label their products and services and the things on their site by names other than what people are actually searching for, right? Instead of the category, they use their brand name that nobody's heard about, or a term that they like to give to a product or service that is known only to the people in that company. Yes.
Can we step back a tiny bit? The last thing on the page before was about the quarterly structure. Did you give an example of that? Almost like people in the drawing.
Yeah, so if you name your pages by something other than what's on the content, so by other than what's on that page, right? That can confuse Google as to what the page is actually about, right? If you were to label, and there's a bunch of examples of this, but one example is if you were to label all of your pages in the title tag, which we'll get to, if you were to label all that header stuff as snowboards, every single one of your 100 pages with snowboards on it is the exact same title snowboards. Google doesn't know what the highest level page of snowboard is. Maybe every single one of those pages is a different model and brand of snowboard on it and a different price point, a different copy associated with it. So if someone searches for the word snowboard, you could have all the visitors on your website, but Google doesn't know which page to send them to because it doesn't know which one is the most generically about snowboards. and which pages are about 100 different brands of snowboards that you have. So it's about signaling Google to go to the right place.
So follow-up question, is that in the URL or in the HTML tag or both?
Both, definitely. And we'll see some examples of where that comes in. Okay, so there's a few different ways that this happens using uncommon terms like food cooling units when people actually search for the word refrigerator or freezers, etc., or just simply coolers, right? Language and international subtleties, I don't really believe that this has a big effect, but if you're using color with a UR in it, that might signal to people that you're not a US site. I mean, we're talking about, there's all these different little signals, there's thousands, maybe even millions of different rules of code that Google has learned from and to which types of pages are more appropriate, right? Location targeting, right? So if you put content in Spanish, when the majority of people who would visit your site are Portuguese-speaking Brazilians, right? And that's a mismatch between a contextual element related to geography and language. Google knows that its Chrome browser, right, has a language setting for an individual. So it's probably not going to return a site that's in a different language than what the users who were in that area are actually speaking. So that's important. Mixed contextual signals. So if you have a blog post that's Mexico's best coffee, but it's about a vacation resort in Canada, that happens to sell Mexico's best coffee, right? Then you're sending mixed messages to Google as to what your page is about and what search terms it should actually go for. There's a whole bunch of others. These are just some of the basics. So when it comes to building a site that is friendly for search engine, there's a few things that we have to do. First, we have to make sure that our content has actual text encoding, like what I showed you in that source, that can be scanned and indexed by Google. It should not look on the back end like this flank steak versus Mr. Chippers, right? The problem here is that a lot of companies have an image for their entire website here, or some other content that's not scannable. Maybe it's like Flash that comes in, maybe it's like a picture of text. And when that happens, there's not a lot of text to go off of. Let me see if, here we go, SEO browser. So there's a website, and if you got your computer up, I encourage you to do this. There's a website that actually shows you what your site looks like in the Azure search engine. Let's do this for, okay, let's look at Progressive. Let's go to just progressive.com. Right, there's Flow, hi Flow. You can save over $584, etc., get insurance for anything you need. There's all this nice, beautiful stuff here, right? But this isn't how Google sees it. Let's look at how Google sees it. I'm not about simple. Okay. So Google sees this. Your policies, first time logging in, making payments. It's seeing all of these terms. Get insurance for everything you need, insurance companies, all the different things, types of things you can get. Keywords, auto insurance, homeowner insurance, etc. Right. Not so pretty here, but this is the way that the search engine reads it. I click on auto insurance. Yes.
So can you kind of type that is in an image using that will show up for SEO?
Correct. So if you have a website with tons of images in it, that may be okay, but if that's all you have, then there's not a lot of things that we can do to determine what you're excited about. Sort of. We'll get to an additional slide where I'll show you some other places where this works. But point is that if you look at your website, I'll look at a website that I have worked on before. It's simple. And basically this type of site here is pulled from get the point. So that's what Google is going off of to determine what your site is about, right? So thinking, well, do I have words and menu items and other things that actually put like signals to Google in the copy of what it's about, right? We'll get to some other tags though that talk about some other ways it can be done. So rather than having it show up like the one on the right, we want it to show up more like the one here on the right. In this case, it looks like more like the other sites that we were looking at where there's all this content that can be scanned, and therefore it shows up through a search engine more like SEO browser.com. So in this case, the jugglingpandas.com will have a copy that actually signals to Google. Maybe we should show up for the keyword juggling pandas if someone's searching for us. So that said, you want to write content for every single one of your pages if you want that site to be ranked. We also want to provide some additional tags that will, that I'll show you momentarily. Things like alt text for images or titles in your page or header tags. We want to prioritize the menus, right? So if you just put a random order for your menu or your sidebar menu and all that, the way that Google looks at it is in the same sort of F format that users look at it, right? So it's first going to look at your menu. And it's going to consider menu item number 1 more important than menu item number 3. So if you were to see that SEObrowser.com, you're likely going to see it listed this way, where it's 1, 2, 3, as opposed to 1, 2, 3 like this. And it's just going to go down the page and list your content the way it's reading it this way. If you have Flash or images or other video content, right, there could be an advantage to putting some text below it or actually describing what it is or putting a scannable title above that instead of maybe a banner that people can't read. There's a reason why media sites who post a video, right, like if there's a video or an article that's about something that they said on the Daily Show, right, there's a reason why they include the video as well as a transcription or an article written about the video itself, right? Because in addition to a video that may itself go viral because it's funny or interesting, you're also getting SEO credit if you want to show up high in the search results when someone is typing in something about that video or looking for content related to it, right? And then of course use SEObrowser.com if you're unsure and you want to get an idea of the way that Google is working. Another thing that you need to consider with your link structure and navigation on that is, can someone get to each page on your site by clicking on links, right? I said before that you can't, Google's not going to like it if you have to fill out a form to get to a page. Or if you have to type in something into a search bar, hit enter, and get search results, right? If you have your own search feature, that's the only way you can get to a page. Right? There's no tactic that people used to use where, like, instead of trying to link all the pages together, you have a search that you do. You type in a search query into maybe your search bar, and then you get to a page, right? If you have thousands of pages on your site, that theoretically could be a way to reach it. If you don't have a way to click on links to get there, Google's not always going to see them as connected. It calls that page an orphan page, basically. There's some reasons why orphan pages exist out there strategically, right? But if you as a user cannot just click links to get to those pages, Google's not going to give as much credit to your whole site for SEO purposes. What's one reason why you might want to have an orphan page where you can't just click to links?
Landing page?
Yeah, if you were to run a promotion for your existing customers, you don't want people to just be able to find it on your site, like if it's like a really good promotion or something, or even specific content that's only driven by email campaigns. You want to give someone, a buy one get one free, but you don't want to have all of your site traffic see that. But a lot of companies do this. In fact, most companies do. They have a different offer for like their ad campaigns to give someone a deep discount than if you just go to the website yourself. So in this case, you wouldn't necessarily want people to find it. They could still see it out there, but you wouldn't want them to list it in the search results for your company. And it's not as important to you to get sort of credit for people going to that page for your new site. Other things that you can do, search boxes I mentioned, frames or iframes. If the rule of thumb here is if you can't see, if you view the source, you can't actually see the content that's inside of a frame. Sometimes content is pulled in through different coding mechanisms. You can't actually see it in the source code the content that's in there, then Google probably can't see it as well. If you have a million links out, like all over your page, like if you want to be the next, like, Amazon, and there's not that many people going to your site, Google does count the number of links on your site to different pages within your site, and they sort of give you credit for the linkages that you make. But the more links that you put on your page, the less sort of credit you're getting for that. Another way of thinking about it too is, I mentioned popularity. So if there's third-party sites that are linking to you, let's say there's a page out there on a big website like Mashable, and they say the 100 best pet gadgets, right? And a whole bunch of people go to Mashable.com, a whole bunch of people go to this page with your link on it, right? You would get more credit if they said the top 10, and you were one of the 10 links on that page. You get more credit for that than if you were on a top 100 list, because Google gives you less credit for every additional link that's on that page. So it's something to consider.
So you're referring to the person who is part of the link, not that national.
Correct. So in that case, from a third party, the more links they have to other places, the less credit one of those links is going to get. If there are only 5, it was like top 5, right? And each one of those 5 is going to get more credit from that page. Additionally, right, if you're trying to signal to Google what some of the most important pages on your site are, right, you'd probably, for a user, you'd link to maybe the top 5 pages on your site and use a menu for this, right? If you have 1,000 different links on your homepage, you're providing more and more links to different pages and telling Google all 1,000 of these links are important, right? As opposed to if you just gave Google 5 links on your homepage you click on. Google understands that if you have 1,000 links on the page, it's basically dividing the relative importance of all of those links. So it's for SEO purposes, if you want to tell Google that 5 pages are important, you might only have 5 main links on your site. If you have a menu that just goes on and on and on, all the way down for scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, like let's say Target, for instance, had all of its products in a menu in a sidebar on the left. And you can just keep scrolling forever and see all of the thousands of products that they sell on the site. That's telling Google that every one of those links is basically equally as important. So what does Target do, both for a user perspective and for SEO? They use categories, right? Toys, clothing, hardware, right? It breaks it up into categories, and then from there, it has additional subcategories and products. So it's signaling to Google that, we'll say with clothing, whatever, that this is a one big main category, and this is a more important link than each of their individual products. This is a signal to Google. Imagine like your site has 100 points that you can allocate, right? If you want to allocate 1 point of SEO credit to every single one of the deep pages like way down in your site, or do you want to allocate more of those points on your homepage to your broadest categories to identify the product or service areas? And that's sort of how that works.
But definitely is a mirror to the user experience as well.
Yeah, and it's important to the user experience because when you get to the site, you obviously don't want to go through a long list of products that you may not be interested in, right? You generally start by identifying what your need is, and then if you really want past 1 of 5 categories, you can further explore into that category. So it falls into best practices for users as well, which Google models its rewarding of SEO points for. Basically, it's intuitive to the user experience, which is what Google cares about at the end of the day. So this sounds all very general because it is, right? The rules are going to change. The way that Google ranks is going to change. There's a list of search ranking factors that you can, it's Mazda's 2015 search ranking factors, and they have to do a new study every 2 years because it changes so drastically. In 2013, the number of pluses that you have on the number of followers your company has in Google Plus was a really big search ranking factor. It's not really anymore now that they've changed that, but it changes from time to time. However, the big thing that you want to focus on is making sure that your site overall is easy to use, navigate, and understand, that it's reasonably professionally designed and accessible to modern browsers. If it looks funky, and things are overlapping and it's not responsive and resizing, it just doesn't work very well on a mobile device. Google now has ways of recognizing this and penalizing sites that are not responsive and mobile friendly. When you think about different browser sizes, resolutions, devices, etc.
Maybe this is not a question, but then Google has no way to search for an image in the same way. There's no SEO for image.
There is, we'll get there.
Okay.
Making sure that what a user is trying to do is reasonably accomplished. Google is smart enough now to be able to determine what an e-commerce site is, and it has signals of what typical e-commerce platforms look like. So if it sees you going to pages that resemble a checkout process, you can imagine that Google might have an idea of what a credit card field looks like when it's labeled credit card, right? And the way that different merchants process it. So it can probably better determine if someone's gone through a multi-step process to actually buy a product, and if someone goes onto an e-commerce page and immediately bounces or looks at a product and then leaves and goes and completes a transaction later. And just making sure that you're delivering content that's actually related to a user's search. It's not just about naming your page a certain way. It's also about providing providing information that's contextually relevant to what a user is searching for. Again, there's no way for Google to really determine what type of language is influential. But if you think about the billions of searches that happen, the way that Google can watch what happens when people type in a term like pet food and then click on a bunch of sites, and look at the correlations between site A and site B and the content that's on those pages. If site A doesn't really have a whole lot of content associated with pet food, and then the person leaves and then they go to site B and there's a lot of information about pet food, Google just learned something when it watched that person's behavior and going to that site. Yes?
While we say big and e-commerce sites, didn't Google recently start using more wages sites and start using SSL?
Possibly, I don't know the answer to that. But generally, yes, they also have their own way of like if you go to 1-800-Flowers, they have certain merchants that are considered safer. So if you sign up with Google as more of like a safe merchant and they can certify your transaction, there's a lot of other things you can do to make sure, but yeah, that's probably the case. If you're really interested in all of the entire list of ranking factors on how Google gives you more credit to your website and search return, Moz has a really great list that I went to here. Is there a time when you might care more about a flashy design, with lots of moving pieces and flash animations and all that? You might care about that more than just having static, scannable content on your site, or a big long set of paragraphs on all of your pages. When might you care more about design, and motion, and flash elements than you do about scannable content? Yep.
Maybe when your site is from a really well-known brand and it's on that page. So it lets you know something. People let you know and they go to the site to see something old and I just think
Yeah, if your website is, one, doesn't require a high volume of people. If you could count on your hands and toes, or your fingers and toes, how many of the most important clients are out there, then you're not as worried about SEO, or you're not as worried about just making your site perfect to every single Google. You're worried about the impact when someone gets there. There's a reason why a lot of marketing agencies and ad agencies, when the biggest brands in the world, right, know who some of the best agencies are, they're going on their portfolio and their reputation. So those companies are not as purely focused on just building their site for SEO. They're trying to build their site for that wow factor. So there are cases where it's okay. Target, for instance, or Walmart, or Nordstrom, or any of those sites that sell, or Sephora, or any of those sites that sell things online and focuses on volume. E-commerce is a good example, of course. Or Huffington Post, or Fox News, or any of those sites, they care about being completely SEO optimized. It's hugely important to them. So they have to balance SEO performance along with and building their site around SEO, as well as building it to the user experience and making sure that it's visual and looks good. And so those two factors always have to come into play. If you remember from before, when we were looking at the difference between advertising traffic and SEO and organic traffic, and we did that exercise last week, where we said, hey, compare Google paid versus Google organic, right? The Google organic, that's the SEO stuff. We don't pay for that. And generally have a lower conversion rate than if you control the experience or a landing page, but it's free. So if your organic traffic is to drop because you redesign your site and it's not SEO friendly at all, then you're missing out on some of your most high profit customers, actually, because you didn't pay to get that traffic. So it's just something to consider, and that you have to kind of balance, between the ways that you're bringing people to your site and how you build it. So I'm going to actually skip to a different section first, and then we'll come back to keyword strategy. So in order for us to build content on our pages successfully, we need to understand the different places that we can actually do this, right? We saw examples of the body copy, but there's a lot of other places where we can tell Google what our page is about. So a good quote here, it's not just about getting visitors to your site, it's about getting the right kinds of visitors. And in order for us to do that, we need to place the keywords that are related to our audience, what our site is about, into different places on our site. So someone asked about images, right? Like, just because you put an image on your site, does that mean that Google will never be able to actually know what that image is about? The answer is no, they definitely can. There's a thing called alt tags, right? So this set of shoes here, right? Even though on the front end, from a user's perspective, they just need to see a pair of shoes, we can put in the code of this image alternate text that says that this is a pair of shoes or a specific set of shoes. There's also other things like title tag, H1 headers, our actual URL, the meta description. Let me show you where these all exist. So someone give me a search for anything, any product, service, anything, within range. Clown shoes? Okay, I think we're going to be pretty safe with clown shoes, hopefully. All right.
You've never done.
All right. So clown shoes, right? The things that we're considering from, here's just the sponsored stuff. So this is the first result, organic result for clown shoes, right? So this is clownshoesbeer.com. I'm gonna take a chance.
And beer.
And beer. Am I at least 20 years old? Probably. All right. So this first thing right here is the title tag, right? So they basically named their site around clown shoes. It's the about page. This is our URL, obviously. Notice that Google highlights, or excuse me, boldens the clown shoes part of it. Even though there's not like a hyphen or an underscore, it recognizes that it's related to my search, clown shoes. It's also looking for, in the title tag, this term clown shoes. They actually have to do data, get the clown shoes process there. Yeah.
So when you we search for red clown shoes, will this the same result come up? Or if we search shoes, will the same result come? Well, I'm sure it's not the same result. Like we need to have exactly that. Google needs to have exactly the same word. Like when they set up the keyword, and it has to be exactly the same when people put in the keyword.
Yeah. So, well, the section we'll get to next is on keyword research, and I'll talk a little bit about that and why we have to target more than one term. But notice what happens when I type in red clown shoes. Why do you think Google is now showing me e-commerce sort of websites, like Party City, Walmart, eBay? But when I type in just regular clown shoes, they're giving me some clown shoes ads, but some of the top ones here are about things that have nothing, like beer. A lot of stuff about beer. Any ideas here?
Sure. Because I think if you're so specific, have to figure out they know Google all that effort first.
Right. This is Google having learned behavior about why people are searching for certain things, right? Over time, and now I don't really know a whole lot about this Tom Shoes beer company or whatever, but what I would assume is that at least people in the LA area, could be different in Kansas, when they search for clown shoes, probably a lot of them were looking for the Clown Shoes beer company. Because look, all of these results are like all about, most of them are a lot about beer and stuff, right? And so this site probably gets a lot of traffic to it and is really SEO'd the term clown shoes pretty well, right? But the second I get to, if I type in buy clown shoes, Google knows that I'm looking to buy clown shoes, so it's going to present me a different set of results associated around Party City, eBay, Amazon.com, beer shoes, etc. Right? So anyway, the point is that, let's say I type in the word buy clown shoes. This is the title tag, so it's one opportunity to insert a keyword. This is my URL, a second opportunity to put in the keyword or part of your keyword, right? Notice ebay.com on shoes. It uses it in its URL because Google sees it and the user sees it. In fact, Google wants the user to see it so much that they actually make it bold when it appears in the URL. This set of text right here is called a meta description. This tag and this tag can be seen on the page, but this is the only place where I'm going to see this text, pretty much. This meta description. I'm not going to see this on the home page anywhere, but I see it here. Yes. Yeah, there's a type of meta tag called a meta keyword that a lot of big companies still use, and they pretty much are phasing out now. But the meta description is important because this is additional copy for you as an individual to determine if it's relevant, right? You read this to find out what the site is about, right? Sometimes we need to read a couple sentences to know, is this the best site for me? Google also looks for keywords in here as well. So this is an opportunity to see how the bullish comments are here, the signal. There's also a place on the actual page itself. This might be better. Let's go to, here we go. So what I just highlighted is most likely an H1 tag. There's all sorts of ways you can style the text on your page. The H1, H2, H3 is basically the way that the web developer styles different elements. And the H tags are typically the signal to the style they use for all headers. So if you put text, if your web developer put text lower down the page and they associate it with H1, assuming that this is H1 and then it's clown shoes, etc., with a tag at the end. If they put another tag, any other tag that said H1 next to it, it would have the same exact styling, size, font, color, underlines right through whatever that style is, as the word clown shoes. But this H1 tag is actually a really important SEO element because it's basically your way of saying what this entire page is about. A lot of times, brands will use multiple H1 tags because they don't think about the fact that it's important for SEO purposes. So that's why you'll notice, if you go to target.com, if I were to go to, I don't know, any category like, let's go to action figures, right? Notice, this is going to be an H1 tag. I guarantee you when I go to the source, hopefully I'm right here, right? Because that would be pretty embarrassing. I go to H1 tag, action figures, and place X. Let me zoom this in. And they have this on every single one of their hundreds of category pages, right? So, if I type this in, you search. Let's see where target shows up. Action figures in place X, same page. It's a signal to Google on what it is. Also notice the other elements here. I type that in. Google's also made it as the title of the page. It's put it in the URL. They're doubling down on this word. And they're putting this action figures in here in a meta description. it continuously tells you what it's about. Also, if someone types in action figures, they may intuitively actually be looking for Star Wars, Spider-Man, Batman, whatever is really popular now for types of action figures. But the user's not actually typing in, Star Wars action figures into the search engine. Target understands, and their SEO, whoever's doing your SEO understands that people may just be looking for a term action figure, but what they're hoping for is to get them to a result that leads them to Star Wars action figures, right? So this is their way of thinking about the greater category, as opposed to only about each one of the types of action figures. It will go for the types of action figures and they'll build entire pages around just those, right? Let's see what Target does for Star Wars action figures. And that probably does show up. Action figures, let's see Lego, let's see anything else. But, so they have a page dedicated to Star Wars action characters, feature brands, etc. So they have it in the URL. And they have a set of search results that are tailored around that. So all of this content on here, Google is scanning, right? It can basically scan this text and know that it's got all of these products on the page that are associated with that, right? Not the banners, but this probably has an alt tag associated with it. Sometimes a brand will actually have this scannable, in this case they don't. But they'll put text above the image to do that sometimes. Okay, anyway, getting back to this. So the meta description, an opportunity from the search result to say what it's about and a good place to put your keywords and write influential copy. Your URL. Oftentimes people don't make really strategic decisions on how they're typing in their URL, right? That's a great place for keywords to go. That is really about keyword topic. Your alt text. Let's look at some alt text here. Let's see. So in their case, they're saying special offer. Not great. Let's go to the product page and see what happens. Go to this game, Star Wars Battlefront on the Xbox. And let's see, what's that yellow, I think. And what is this? Alt is Star Wars Battlefront. Where the mouse is looking at right now. So every image on this page, even though they can't read it, they're signaling to Google what this is because they want to show up. Let's see if Target actually shows up for this. One of those. Let's say buy Star Wars because I'm getting reviews. They show up here for it. So they're using every opportunity to do this. Notice it's in their URL. It's probably in their body copy. Star Wars Battlefront, Star Wars. They put it in the word Battlefront a whole bunch of times in the copy. They're not using it every single line because that would signal to Google that the kind of keyword something. The user would get annoyed who's actually reading that because it doesn't really make sense if they just keep saying the word over and over and over again. So the idea is to make sure you're using the term, but to do it in a way that's natural and still influential in that copy. They also list other products that are associated with Star Wars video games, etc. This is the H1 text, most likely. Every single product will have its own unique one. So if someone types in buy Star Wars Battlefront Xbox One, which would probably be a search for people who know they want to buy the Xbox One version of this game, Target would probably show up here as well. So the question is, where do you actually put this in, right? If you have a WordPress page, every single page on your WordPress site is going to give you the option to put it in your page title, which will show up in that search result as a blue link text. of putting in a meta description, which is your description, which usually 250 or 60 characters, you have an opportunity to label your URL, picking your URL, which you want to think about SEO for. Every image that you upload has alternate text. If you have to put an image on a page, when you upload it, you have the ability to change the size, add an alternate text to it, etc. And whatever body copy that you're actually writing in, you have the opportunity to decide I'm going to insert keywords in here that are relevant to this product that I want people to find, and do a search for it. Some more information on here. Oh, and by the way, title tags also appear in another place. Does anyone know where the other one appears? Title tags. It appears in the search results, but it also appears somewhere else. Yeah. So when you've got a bunch of tabs open, each of those tabs has a name for it. So this tag here, although you can barely see it, it says, when I hover over, it says Star Wars Battlefront Xbox, target, which is basically exactly how it'll show up in the search return. Now, as a user, I'm not going to see that. I'm not going to see the whole thing here, but the first few words I'm going to see it, right? But it's less important up there. That's so you know which tag you have to go to. It's more important when a user sees it in the search result and they know that that's what that page is about. Very often, title tags need to include two things: your brand name and what that page specifically is about, right? Looking at something as generic as, for instance, progressive motorcycle insurance is going to be a lot less specific. That's an entire category for a page. It's going to be a lot less specific than Xbox One, Star Wars Battlefront video games, right? One of the thousands of products, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of products that Target offers online, right? So it has to be more specific, right? There's a few ways that you can do this. First off, it's about 65 to 75 characters. Usually 65 to 70 is safe to make sure that you don't get a few dots, you don't get ellipses when you see it in the search results. So after that, it basically gets cut off. Generally, you want to find a good balance of a clear, keyword-driven type of title that says what it is and also identifies your brand. Typically you'll see brands either put their name at the beginning or at the end of a search result. If you do a search for anything, you'll see this very common. Progressive might have their name at the beginning, Geico might have their name at the end. This is generally a strategic decision based on whether or not, where they want to put their brand from Google's perspective and from the user's perspective. You remember I said that when Google sees things in succession, it assumes that the first thing is more important. It does the same thing with the tags. So if it sees the brand name first, it's going to assign more credit to the brand name than it will what follows the brand name. Now, it's not a huge difference, right? The second word in your title tag is not going to get a huge amount less credit than the first word. But these decisions are still made. Also, you have to consider it's the first thing that our users will do. So is the user more likely to respond to the actual keyword that they're searching about or to the brand name that they happen to trust? So a very typical choice for brands that are not incredibly well known is to start their title tag with a keyword or what the page is about, and then put their brand name at the end. If the brand name itself you feel holds a lot of weight to user searches and to people just being generally aware and trusting your brand, that's when you'll see brands put their name first. But it's sort of like a 6 one way, half dozen the other if you're a brand that everybody knows. Your title tag in general should be descriptive and readable. You want it to be clear on what it is. You want a human being to be able to look at it and know exactly what they're going to get on your page. You should also incorporate the keyword that's the most appropriate with what's on that page. That's why if you type in auto insurance, you're just going to see all of these pages that are car and auto insurance. It's going to be on every single one of those title tags. It's also going to be in the meta description and in the URL. I give you a link for best practices for title tags if you're interested in that. Meta description. You get about 160 characters usually for this before it starts getting cut off in the search results. So you want to focus on a description that is using your keywords or the main keyword that's most important for that page, or one or two keywords, but it really has to be just readable to a human being. Someone's got to be able to read it and understand what your page is about, and it's got to be convincing to them. So there's the element for Google and and per user. If you do not put a meta description on your page, you forget this step. Google is going to scan your page and put whatever the first content it finds on it is. If you don't have a lot of content on your page, I've seen Google literally put the information in the footer as the meta description in the search result. You don't want that to happen. Don't let Google decide for you. Actually write that meta description for every single page strategically. URL structures. It's an opportunity to say to Google what your page is about. If you put a random URL that has no significance to your keyword, you're missing an opportunity to signal to Google and to the user, because as you noticed, when someone types in a search term, if that exists in URL, Google bolds it. And remember, there's not a lot of ways that you can get your brand or your page to stand out, because every page basically looks, every search result for the most part looks the same. So having it bolded in keywords in a few stops can be really good for increasing your click-through rates. You can use things like hyphens, but you probably noticed when we looked at the clown shoes one that it actually caught it without the hyphens. But for users to be able to read it more easily, hyphens is usually recommended. If you have multiple pages, and we'll take a break in a minute, but if you have multiple pages, consider the fact that you might not want to name your pages with the same keywords, right? There are countless number of Star Wars related products that Target has on its site. So it's not going to name every site after the keyword action figures and figures, or even just Star Wars. If you've got 1,000 different Star Wars products that you're selling, you're not going to try and just focus on the word Star Wars or Star Wars toys for your specific product pages. You would probably base it around the actual product name model around it. If you're doing snowboards, you wouldn't name every one of your 100 snowboard pages you could buy that specific model of snowboard. You would start using the keywords on that page that says what kind of snowboard it is. The Burton X2L snowboard green, right? If you have the same product but with a red version, then you use that keyword with red, or a slightly different model number. You'd be going after the most specific keyword that's appropriate for that page. And if you have a snowboard page that you were only going after snowboard terms, or buy snowboards, etc., that would be your highest level snowboard page. If you take the former route and just label every one of your products and go after Star Wars action figures, and that's your term for all of those 1,000 pages, this is called keyword cannibalization. That's when Google doesn't know where to send it. You've ever been to a site where you're really looking for one page and you're writing something specific, and they list a couple different pages that don't have anything to do with what you're talking about? You might actually see those terms in that page. That's called keyword cannibalization. Google's not sure what page to send you to, because the way that company has done SEO for their site is so broad in here. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. When we get back, we're going to do a quick activity and then go to keyword research. I've got 8:18. I'll start again at 8:28. Yeah, it depends on the search. 160 characters is generally the same. Yeah, anything over that is like, I even gauge in safe and just do it. Yeah, again, just because it's so, and as the further into the description, it's slightly less relevant the term is to what Google says. So you have your keyword after the first 2 words, you get slightly more keyword than
Are we? It's usually so bad I didn't say that.
Plus you get the benefit, and the other thing too is that if all of your meta descriptions are the same, that's how another way that you're confusing people, right? A lot of people have the same general description throughout their entire site, and that's one way that you're basically telling Google, all of these sites are about the same exact thing, right? So you're not differentiating from the other, from the other description. You also see that meta description in, like, if someone posts on Facebook, that's how you place the meta description.
Okay. Also, for a million things, makes social
To like describe things like it. But there's some like really cool things that can be done.
Right, and so it's got a lot of opportunity to do some creative stuff.
No problem.
Last Okay, so my number one is the Renegade. My number two is the Blackhawk. My boyfriend and his family is from Chicago, and his mom was a diehard Blackhawk fan. So I think that the first time we could actually like each other was once we went to different conferences. It was like the first time it was like she did this team.
I mean, if your brand's not already starts to make sense.
Yeah, they've got season tickets to the Blackhawks. Yeah. They've had season tickets since 1957. Yeah. It's a little crazy for sure. There's a lot of dark days in between.
Yeah, so I'll show you where this is. So this is the time.
No.
And then if you look at the optional code, it's right there. So if you're on time,
Yeah, it's too hard. I actually try not to pay too much attention until like March to get burnt out and I mean, it's anybody's game, it's the playoffs anyway, for the most part.
and this is where the.
You know? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's pilot season, so excessively long. So you can't believe how long you're just You know, I want the old school jersey.
We don't have our website up yet.
I'm trying to get it for so we're China.
No, but I have a month. So
I love the ties though. It's straight up.
you know, it's like building a website or
that's the same, regardless of.
The links.
Oh,
Assuming.
yeah, probably. I'll take that one. That's pretty. Wait, which one's the side?
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
But the keyword research, like, I wanna spend my contractors.
So much better about actually telling them that I can write. Like, I'm an asshole.
Then I'm the one that generated the action.
I'm learning from her example of this. She like pointed out the problem, like, what I had noticed, and I was like, oh, that's their problem, people that way.
Here's all that you would do is create content, right? Here's the like copy or ads or.
Working, I'm working my curve with it, right?
Negotiate magazines and websites.
That's how it works. Go like this.
I was this.
So, how many of us have gotten to read you and like the last of 5 people? So, it's a nonprofit, that's like, it's a LA-based local company, where the views came from. So basically they do, one-on-one tutoring for foster kids and at-risk kids, and they also create like other educational, opportunities. So they'll do like summer tutoring, or they'll like, they do like a backpack ride, they'll do if they're struggling, they'll give them like additional tutoring, like we've done like emergency services too, so like we. Just one night, their parents disappeared. And it's selling local, yeah. But primarily what they do is they create like educational opportunities, they do it off of the SEO. So one of the reasons for that is they need college something that feels successful, right? They grow up on campus, it's not something that's here, it's something that they belong to. Which is an incredibly powerful thing that you think about, but it's like, it's amazing when you hear the kids say all the time, I'm like, oh, when I go to this place, So, it's been really interesting, because most of our kids, the program started around 4 years, most of our kids started at least a grade level behind, if not more, and all of them are at grade level or above. In 4 years, which is incredible. So, yeah, that's what we were looking at right now. Right, I mean, because it's like basically they have to have that, they but it's like, they have the they have an opportunity to have a bunch of opportunity to, just blog, it's like the people like, nonprofits, it doesn't like do anything. And I was looking at the like SEO of it, it was just like more volunteers. Yeah, and so the language doesn't like, it's not something that's going to elicit like, oh, I have to volunteer for this, it's like language that's like nonprofit jargon that's like nobody cares, not actually story in a meaningful way. There's like a video on there that's pretty good, so like, it's called Cheers Cans.
that'll probably get you the best results.
It's just scary. It's got a lot of video.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Mhm. Yeah. And like if there's multiple pages that go through it, and like a lot of the copies and things, and it's all like written like this, where it's just like, it's not really very compelling.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah. Engineering. It's like, environment.
Yeah.
Very similar to other. All sorts of like years old. Stuff. Also, I love the video yeah,
We have some like
well, I love this one.
yeah.
I love the whole thing that I did there.
Okay, I'll show you. Dealers, wholesalers.
So like, you would go
Dealers.
Okay, I'm gonna get started. Okay, so, a couple questions that came up about meta descriptions and about content and whatever. There are many ways that you can choose to name your pages or on your website, content, keywords that you can go after, right? There's many ways that you can write your meta description. The question about like, well, what if I'm not really good at like copywriting, or if I don't know what type of words that I should put in there, keywords that I should put in there. And how do I know how to differentiate my different pages, right? Or how to differentiate what I'm putting on different pages. The key is to really think about the way that some of the best e-commerce sites do it, and the way the best media sites do it, right? If you were to look at, and there's tons of like examples, you can see just on the front end what all these other sites are doing out there already. Some of the best sites in whatever your industry is. Look at what they're doing. Look at how they're naming their different levels of pages, right? The specificity of the keyword changes as you go further into the site, right? What if you were to look at Target.com, right? There's keywords they use for their top level of the site that are different than the different categories, right? When you get to clothing versus maybe hardware versus kitchen and home appliances and whatnot, they're going to have different keywords that they're going after for each one of those pages that they're strategizing around. But then when you get to the product level, or even the brand level, right? Like if you get down to the Star Wars, and all of their Star Wars toys, they're going after those different keywords, and then you have additional levels. So the further you get into the site, and the more you kind of go down that rabbit hole, so to speak, the more specific your term should be. And it should be differentiated and more specific than the level above it, right? That's sort of the best way. Because if someone does a search for a keyword that you've done really good SEO around, you want to take them to the exact place they're trying to go, and you use keywords to differentiate that. The other thing about like your meta description, right, is ask yourself, is this description unique, not just to what's out there, but also to my site? If you use the same meta description on every single page of your site, if you were to have 100 different pages on your site with all different products and services or different things about your site, different places that someone could go navigate to, and if that meta description, every single page is the exact same thing, happens a lot. Companies won't think about a unique meta description and they'll just use a generic company description, right? Then if your page shows up in a search result, Google may just randomly pick one because it doesn't know which one to pick because you've labeled your site the exact same. I've seen other companies who have used the same title tag and the same meta description and URLs that don't actually say anything about what that page is used for. So ask yourself, is it unique? Is it compelling? Does it accurately describe what a user is going to find on that page, right? Is it different from a page that is somewhat similar? If you have closely related products or services, then find a way through your language to differentiate those products or services. Maybe it's a similar description, but it's a different model number, or it's a different brand, even though it's the same product category. That should show up in your copy, in your tags, in your metadata, and all of that. I think you had asked before about other meta data that's no longer being classified. There is a thing called a meta keyword that's not really super important anymore. Some brands have left it in there as sort of a legacy thing and haven't taken it out. I'm gonna guess that if I just look at Geico, they're gonna have meta keywords in there. Yeah, so this is where your metadata shows up. The description that shows up in the search engine is basically gonna be this. If I look at Geico, search them, I'm gonna see exactly this meta description. Geico Government has been providing affordable auto insurance since 1936. They also have keywords in here. This is kind of funny because Google for a while now has indicated that they don't care about this anymore. In fact, a lot of SEO plugins, there's like if you have a WordPress site there or Squarespace or any of those, there's a plugins you can use that actually help you put in the SEO data really in a really efficient manner. And they don't even list keywords as an option because Google doesn't care about this so much anymore. But a lot of brands actually still have it. So if you have a competitor that's been around for a while, go on their site and look at their source on every one of their pages, and it'll right off the bat tell you all of the keywords that are really important to them. So it's one way. But also just by looking at the tags that they use, what's their title tag, what's their meta description, you get a general sense of the kinds of words and phrases that they're going after if you're thinking about competitive analysis, right? So, but meta keywords, don't worry about that. Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Mhm.
Does like Bing or other search systems reference keywords?
Not really. It's possible. They kind of, Yahoo and Bing are just generally trying to follow what Google does. That's been their strategy for a while. They try and differentiate it a little bit, but for the most part, when Google does something, Bing and Yahoo tend to follow. And there's, I think Bing and Yahoo are actually still the same company. I don't know if Microsoft owns it both, but they're pretty closely related now. Okay. So if you remember when, the other thing I want to say about keywords actually, I like to, if I'm going to choose a keyword, and we're going to talk a little about keyword research right now, if I'm going to choose the appropriate keywords for my site, I want to think about a two-way relevancy. What I mean by that is, if I'm a company that sells primarily pet food, right, I might be tempted to go after the word dogs and cats. I might be tempted to think, well, I'm an e-commerce site, so I want to go after words like e-commerce site, right? But that doesn't, if I were to think about those terms the other way around, if I were to think about terms like dogs or cute fluffy dogs or Australian shepherds or whatever, and I were to think about all of the things I might be looking for if I just type that term into a search engine, pet food is potentially one of them, but it's one of like the many, many things I might be looking for, right? But if I type in a term like buy pet food online, then it's very high chance that what I'm looking for is what that company provides. So even though a pet food company that sells it online fits into a category like retail, or might fit into a category like dogs and cats and Australian shepherds and whatnot, in terms of being related to that keyword, if you turn that around and say, well, if I type in Australian Shepherd, is there a high chance I'm also looking to buy pet food right now? It's probably pretty low. So that's what I mean by two-way relevancy. So if you're gonna go after keywords, try and make sure that the keywords you go after fit into that two-way relevancy so that if you look at just that keyword, is there a high chance that your company should be at the other end of that search for most users? And that's why you see a lot of people go after keywords that are so broad that there's only a very small chance that their company has to do with what that user is searching for when they type in that term.
But when you said buy, pet food, and whatever, but that's not a keyword. Well, one of the words is a keyword, right? Or you do the whole sentence. Great.
Great question. So keyword, the term keyword really just refers to any word or phrase that you're basing content around. So it could be 2 to 4 words. It could be a 5 or 6 word phrase, basically. And when we get to things like search advertising on Thursday, we'll see examples of keywords that we can actually bid on and pay for that have 5 or 6 words associated with it. They're called long-tail keywords. I'll have to slide down in a minute. A lot of times companies will just focus on really generic terms, and it won't be really specific to what they do. It'll just be that their brand happens to fit into that category, right? If you're a very high-end jewelry retail store, you're not going to focus all of your SEO energy around the word jewelry, because there's so many people that are out there trying to buy jewelry online or look at jewelry online, and there's so much competition around a smaller word like that, because there's so many more searches for it. So rather than that, you might look for more specific terms like buy high-end jewelry or buy premium quality jewelry. Those are kind of more the terms that you'd be trying to get yourself ranked for. So if we remember the way though that Google does indexes, it has a whole bunch of different categories of keywords that people are doing any kind of relevant search around. And it's got probably millions, tens of millions or more of different keywords or keyword categories that it's building individual indexes on. It's why it can return results so quickly, because a lot of these keywords, most of the work of ranking these websites has already happened. In real time, there are sometimes slight changes to them, but as user data is associated with a person's search, it's logged until the next time someone does a search for it. And when it's first logged, it changes the order of websites based on, did people click on that link? Did they bounce? Did people not click on that link? It looks for all sorts of information to whether or not to move a site up or down on the organic list. And as you know, the higher your site is up on that list of results, the more traffic you're going to get to your site, the higher the click-through rate, etc. So it's advantageous. So the point of keywords, not to rank highly for every possible keyword associated with your website, because that's hard to do unless you've got a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of money to actually build additional pages, hire SEO strategists and whatnot. If you're the target of the world, you have a lot of people working on your SEO who are constantly optimizing, who are doing what I'll refer to later as link building around that. But for most people, they need to be really strategic around the 10 or 20 words that are most important to their business in building their site content around that, as well as trying to get placement from other sites around that keyword. So keyword research and the process of researching keywords for your site is really important, because naturally it tells you what keywords and terms you should target with your SEO, both on-site and off-site. It tells you a little bit more about your customers and the types of things that they're actually searching for. It's how you would know that a work-driven seat apparatus may not be what people are searching for, but a lot of people are searching for office chairs, so maybe that's something, a keyword you should think about. But if you're living under a rock, keyword research will give you this information in hard numbers that I'll show you momentarily. Yes?
You build keywords the same way for SEO, for metadata, keywords by paid search. Like if you're doing an AdWords campaign and you're building your campaign on keywords, it's the same approach as when you're doing the SEO stuff on your website.
Good question. You'll start generally in some of the same places. You'll use some of these tools. I'm going to show you one in a minute. But you'll use some of the same tools to get a general idea of are people searching for this. But then you'll do different things with the information when you're done, right? With something like AdWords, I might go after everything that's associated, all keywords. With SEO, I'm going to be strategic on which ones I'm going to choose. Remember, if you don't have that many pages on your site, but you have a really specific niche and an entire product category, right? If you sell high-end yoga clothing, right, you're not going to go after the word yoga, right, because it's just so broad. But you will go after certain terms like high-end yoga clothing, or premium quality yoga clothing, or a specific brand. Maybe if you sell a brand of yoga pants, that is considered high-end. Because remember, you can't put an infinite number of words in your title, in your meta description, in your body content. If you do that, you're going to run out of room. Google's not going to know which one's a priority, and your users are going to get confused because you throw out your keyword under the sun, right? So it's why we have to be strategic and figure out what are the most important keywords and the most likely, the keywords that are most likely to lead to our right users when they do the search. So it tells you a little about your customers. How many people are searching for a term? Do we think a term is really important? But then we go and find out that only 10 people in the country are searching for this every month. When maybe there's another term that fits us too, that 100 or 1,000 people are searching for every month. It informs our way of thinking on how to write our copy to be more in line with the customer on the other side of that computer that we're not always interacting with, right? It can tell you about shifts in products, services, demands, trends that are new or expiring that are becoming less relevant. There's a tool that I would recommend you use called Google Trends. You can see the relative popularity and the relative trending nature in an actual line graph of different terms that exist out there. And you can type in some like really big things like, if you type in the word refugees right now, that term is going to actually fly up. It's really big in the news. And there are some terms like, maybe, I don't know, like maybe the word snuggie, right? For a little while that was kind of popular and then it meant to move on. So you'll see that certain keywords over time actually have different trending data associated with them. But more specifically, we'll see this in the keyword planner. So let me show you an example here. This tool exists inside Google AdWords. Now, you guys all have that $25 gift card, which actually gives you $100 in new accounts with that promotion that I put in that the assignment folder. So, in order to access this, you have to be logged into a Google AdWords account. Normally, this is a problem. There was a point when I was teaching a workshop and it was free to make an AdWords account. Now they require a billing method, which is kind of a pain because you needed to get it here. But nowadays, now we give you this gift card for a reason. So you may not be able to access it today, but when you create your AdWords account, I'm logged into one right now. I click on tools, it exists, keyword planner. All right, so when you're in the keyword planner, let's say for instance, I want to search for, someone give me a typical business, any business, photography. I want to know in the greater Los Angeles area, maybe greater Los Angeles. Or maybe Los Angeles. And I'm going to save it. And I'm going to say in the last 12 months, people who have their browser set in English. Now I'm going to see what kind of searches are related to photography. Now, if I'm just looking for all keywords that Google thinks are related to this, I'm noticing now there's in the tens of thousands of searches every month leading up to the last month related to photography. Now, it's not just photography, it's all sorts of words associated around photography. So we're going to see on Thursday things called ad groups, which are basically like categories of keywords that are all related. But if I were to look just at regular keywords, at a full list of keywords, I can see that this one word that I have here, photography, someone just typing in the word photography has around 8,000 searches on a monthly basis. Seems kind of small, but when you consider the fact that around 60% of the searches that happen every month are unique and have never been done before, people aren't just searching for the word photography if they're looking for a photographer, or they're looking about sites about photography or galleries with that feature well-known photographers or photography, right? There's all sorts of different ways that people are searching that are related to this term. Wedding, blog, landscape, right? Let's see if I can find a long one. Let's go to the Daily photography tips. So all sorts of different keywords and combinations. Digital photography tips, location photography tips. You'll notice that they're looking at all the different combos here and telling you how many people on average are searching for them. Now at times, people are searching for terms that are related, or maybe they have misspellings, and usually what happens is Google will like recommend. So let's say I go to search and I type in digital photography, right? So the ones that are most popular, as will indicate in that keyword, are going to pop up here. So remember, the review classes, magazine, basics. Let me see if I can go down to, let's find digital and see what's in there. Okay. What? Digital, they don't mess with it. But, actually, let's do the photographs, digital. Digital photograph review classes. And, oh, we're going to do that again. Okay, digital review. So if I go to this in my keyword planner, it'll probably give me. Okay, so they do a little different here. But point is that it's giving me all the different combinations: digital photograph, digital photographer, digital photographic. These are all specific things that I could either base my keyword content around, or just know how people are searching for it. If I don't want to sit here and count up in an Excel file every single one of these versions to come up with this, then I can look at this digital photograph group that has terms very related to this and get an idea that people are searching about 120 per month. This is not saying that anyone who uses the term digital, you can see just how closely related some of those terms were. So I'm not going to try and go for every single one of these terms. It's part of 55 different groups here. They're even going to give me ones like that are related, like digital camera, digital preview, digital cam. You'll see like common misspelling, digital camera, etc. But the idea is that as I get more specific, I go to digital, I'm getting around 60,000 searches. So cameras for digital photography. Let's see what happens here. So now I'm introducing a new word in there, cameras, and Google's associating it with more keywords than before. So now I'm getting best compact digital camera. Here's an example of keywords that have, which is the best compact digital camera. Even used like back in a certain year, best compact digital camera, 2012. Then some people are still searching for this word. So there's a lot of ways you can get an idea of the different terms that are available to you. And there are some terms that you're going to find are just searched for a lot less than others, which is how someone who's maybe looking at selling office chairs might not arrive at work-driven seat apparatuses. Your boss says, yeah, but this is really specific to what we offer. And you say, well, I don't think people are going to search for it. He says, well, how do you know? And you just kind of shrug your shoulders. Or you go to keyword planner and say, yeah, but there's only 5 people searching for it on a monthly basis, and I think you're one of those 5 people.
Why do you give them lots of lists, just the filter, or it's the same search results?
Yeah, so if I want to plan for a given marketplace, if I'm a local business, I don't care about the entire US for the search necessarily. I might only care about a specific area. What's that?
You have to do it all.
Yeah, so if I look at the entire world, then I'm seeing 4 million, 5 million, etc. So if I'm a global business, they can default me over to Los Angeles because I'm looking at the US. But then I want to see, like, for instance, Nikon. Keywords associated with Nikon are being searched for Like Nikon is searched for approximately 1 million times a month in the entire world, basically. And this whole suggested bid thing, this is basically like if you were to do advertising for it. So what the average advertiser is bidding worldwide for this term. If I were to change this to what the average advertiser is bidding in the United States, these numbers will change a little bit, they'll get higher. So like suggested bid more like over $1, close to $2 a time. Digital photography, $4.46.
So the per click.
Per click. So if I were to change it to like Indonesia, you'd see more like 15 to 20 cents, something a lot lower. It's all about where the relative competitiveness in a specific region. So things, keywords are going to be more competitive and cost more from a paid media perspective in places like Los Angeles than they will in like somewhere in the middle of Kansas. Because of just, there's more people that are bidding for keywords within a certain range.
So it looks like we can maybe make certain competitors or brand names. And the show now, so we're competing for them.
Yeah,
Should you stuff your site a little bit and?
potentially. If you're a retailer, if you're a retailer of those brands, then you probably want to have branding associated on your page. Right? If you have a page that's all about one specific brand of camera, or you have a site that you can filter and create a unique link for that specific one, then you probably put that in the data, so in the copy and the data associated. This is why we saw this with Target, right? They care not just about selling action figures, but selling Star Wars toys. So they have a page about Star Wars toys that filters it, and it has all the SEO data associated with it. But then when they get down to the actual product level, they have that Star Wars Battlefront Xbox One. People actually search for that term. That's going to be a popular term because it's a big game, right? So all the SEO data is focused on that specific brand name and that specific model name for that product. That product can be bought in a lot of different places. So the companies that best optimize for that keyword, which is going to be specific to this place, it's not going to be the same keyword they optimize for here. But if they optimize better than other sites, or than other companies around that keyword, then their product is more likely to show up in the organic results. That, plus how good is the SEO of the regular site, how popular is their website, how many other pages are linking to it. So there's that two factors, how relevant your site is to the keyword, your page is to the keyword, and the factor of how many people go to your site. Do you get a high click-through when you actually show up and look at search results? Do a lot of other pages link to you, to your site? These things are important. We'll get to that towards the end of this lesson. Okay, so let's say you've gone through your site and you've come up with the 2 or 3 keywords or the 1 or 2 keywords that are the best for every single one of your pages. You've got 100 different pages. Maybe you have a bunch of interrelated keywords and they're specific to each level of your site as you kind of go down the list, from the most generic terms all the way down to the most specific as your individual product or service page, right? You completely optimize that. Once you've done that, you then are better informed on how to write your title tags, what words to put in your meta description, what words need to be scattered throughout the copy, the body copy of your site. It's also important for you to consider how competitive are these terms, right? If you're a new shoe store, right, you're not going to be the first result for Air Jordans, right? If you're a new insurance company, you're probably not going to get under the first page for car insurance and motorcycle insurance. You have to think about, when you actually do a search, what are the companies that show up? One of the popular methods of doing SEO that this agency I work with does, they do this for lawyers, right? And rather than try and get in the Los Angeles area, whatever market you're in, rather than try and tell the lawyers, hey, we're going to write your type of blog and get you on the first page. Well, that can be tough if there's already 50 other lawyers on all those different pages who are already ranking for that. So they go after keywords that are less competitive. They do search terms and they type in searches around, when they identify them in the keyword planner, around things that people are searching for, but that not a lot of lawyers are showing up for, with a lot of questions. There's a reason why there's a lot of content written out there about legal topics, like a divorce, for instance. What happens in a divorce lend, right? You type in a question, one of the many questions around that, then you'll get different lawyers' pages, law firm pages, that have answers to this in their blog. The reason is because they're trying to get their website to show up higher in search results. If 60% of the searches happening every month are unique, it means that people, people are searching for terms like divorce lawyer, divorce attorney, but they're also searching for really specific things. And the theory is if you can't easily get to the first page results, better than 50 other companies you're competing with, you do want to find a place where you can get to the first page results. And oftentimes, it's those longer tail keywords that other law firms or other companies are not going after sufficiently. The best way to do this is if you type in a specific search term, or if you find a search term on Google and there's not a lot of your competitors' main websites that appear on it, that's an opportunity for you to try and build content around that. So that's why you don't always go after every term that's associated with your product or service. You go after ones that you're likely to succeed on if you were to optimize your page. And that's kind of a hard science. My expertise in SEO is more intro, intermediate level. If you have a site that's in an incredibly competitive industry, you start with the keywords that's most associated, but that's usually the time when you hire like an SEO expert, you get an SEO firm involved and going on. But it's important to know the difference between saying, am I going to be that new company that says that goes after buy shoes, or am I going to be the company that goes after keyword combinations that others aren't really going after right now? So, example being, if I were going after buy shoes, I can expect it's going to be like Zappos, Amazon, Overstock, Shoe Dazzle, Famous Footwear, Macy's, Shoes.com, right? It'd be very hard for me to appear in the search results when I start a company today. So in this case, I would be working with an SEO person or an SEO company to identify the keywords that a startup can actually start ranking for, which may be maybe your top products are a really specific type of shoe or a really kind of niche product, and then you ask yourself, what are the terms that are closely associated with those products, and are there people searching for them? And that's where you kind of find those holes. It's not a 10-minute process. It takes a while to strategize which keywords are best for you. And the difference again between these terms is rather than going for shoes, if you're the company that has the lowest cost on different specific model of shoes, if you on the market online have the best price on Air Jordans, maybe make that what your keyword is. Air Jordans lowest price, best price of Air Jordans. Focus that in your content. So when someone is doing a search on lowest cost for Nike shoes or lowest cost for Air Jordans, then you're focusing on that when other companies are just saying buy Air Jordans online. And it may not be as closely associated with that user search as what it is. There are tools like SEMrush and a bunch of paid and free tools you can use to see what some of your competitors are actually ranking for. You can do a generic search, but if you just search for a term that you think you want to go after, you get an idea of which competitors are showing up. But it's different than typing 100 keywords and trying to record each individual result and weight them. Tools like SEMrush are automated around this, but there's other tools like Moz is a good program. MOZ is a pretty good program that allows you to do competitive analysis on them. Most of them are anywhere from like $50 to $100 a month. So if you do a lot with SEO, it's actually pretty reasonable. But you can also look at your competitors' data and see what keywords they're going after. Like I did with Progressive there, I saw what keywords they were going after in their meta keyword area, back in their source. I can't see that by looking on their site. I can generally guess what terms my competitors are going after. And of course, by reading their site content, looking at their title tags and all of that, and their URL structure, I get a pretty good idea. I can tell you just by looking at target site and every one of their pages, I can tell you what the most important keyword on that page is because it's scattered throughout all of those tabs. But there is some of these automated forms are pretty good too. So in general, a good keyword is going to be about a 2 to 4 word phrase that gets traffic and is most specific to your business. Make sure it follows that two-way relevancy. Your website may be in the broad category of that keyword, but turn it around. Does that keyword naturally lead to your specific product or service? If it doesn't, it's probably not a good keyword for you to go after, right? If you have a product that has a really unique name to your version of it, strongly consider how important that unique name is for SEO purposes. Are there ways that you can infuse the generic term for that product or service that better describes what people are actually looking for? And that's for brands that are really focused on this specific name for that, that's a trade-off that you kind of have to make. But realize that there's many places that you can insert your keyword to do better. And if possible, if your business is mostly local, focus on making sure that you've got local terms in your content. If you're a Los Angeles company and you're not starting beyond Los Angeles, make sure you've got the word Los Angeles in your site, in your title, in your meta description, serving Los Angeles. Have it on each one of your pages to make sure that Google knows that you're a local Los Angeles company. And it'll actually show up. It's really important to have the Google My Places for physical locations. That's why those results pop up when you're looking for a local service, like an attorney or a CPA or any of those, or a psychologist, whatever you're looking for. They show up as based on the radius because of Google My Business and because of the content and the address on your site. Okay. So, really quick, I want to break up and do an activity where you choose a business and you write your own tags for this. You're basically going to do this in an Excel file. It's the easiest way to do it. And this is honestly how I do it too. You just use an Excel file and you have a column for title tag, H1 header tag, keyword you're going after, image alt text, URL, meta description. And you actually try writing these out for maybe 5 different pages on your site or a site that you're doing your product around. So, what you'll do is decide as a pair basically, so which site, you've got 2 or 3 people you can work with, and in your actual thing, you're gonna have like your page. So maybe you've got your home page, right? And then maybe you've got your, I don't know, if it's snowboards, then about snowboards, about us, right? Maybe like, maybe it's like Burton, maybe it's another X brand, snowboard. And then for each one of these, you're gonna write things, what's my title? What's my meta description? What's my URL? Etc. You do all of these. H1 tag. What's my H1 tag? Start out with your keyword because you want to have a general idea of what's my keyword with a 2-way relevancy, what's the most important term, and then how am I going to infuse it into these various ones and actually write content associated with them. Title, meta description, URL, H1 tag, etc. If you're unsure, right after the activity page in 51 and 52, this is an example of how you might include it. And go back to the slides on this, and then look at actual pages like Target, for instance, or any of those other pages that actually have clear examples of where is if you view the source, look at the H1 and see what's the actual term there, the most obvious header. Notice how they use keywords there. You don't have to do an alt text, but just identify these 5 things. What's the keyword you're going after? How do you use it in a title tag, meta description, URL, H1? Remember, they 150 characters here, 60 to 70 characters there. The URL should be reasonably short and readable, probably just a keyword. And then the H1 tag is whatever is going to be either your headline or the highest level header on the page. There are different ways you can do it. Break up into your groups and spend the next about 15, 20 minutes doing this, and then we'll share. Choose 3 to 5 pages on the site. 3 to 5 pages.
I guess I have a job and I do that. So these pictures are gonna come. Yeah.
They have data or alt text to them.
I don't know how to do that, yeah. I think that's that alt. Yeah.
It should pop up. So I would see it. Yeah, so that so yeah, where does it show? Insert alt text.
I would say. Tricky little what is this? Is actually have it as a category and then label this associated with it, but it's probably most of the time that's pretty clear. Each one's on the body plan, is I have one question. Can you re-explain this?
Let's go back to
Imagine that you have a product and you Star Wars. You and other sites that but you might not use the higher level. That's all. That's one of our main features. It has a bunch of different features.
When the specific toy starts getting higher ranking, who decides to go higher?
That's interesting.
So is that-
Is helped by
Follow up question. And you use quality and
it is very So the way that we run a campaign, where do you want to be So you tend to see companies that are always advertising also about SEO, but they're not correlated. Because then you can kind of put it out there. Yeah, one indicator of popularity. So, in a way, it does, but it is not, if someone says,
Under keyword, is that
This is the keyword I'm gonna go after. Is it in the columns or this is how I would use it in different columns.
Hey, just to clarify, the first column keyword, that's the keyword that you feel is going to be best to implement on that page. Use the next columns to show how you would implement that keyword. That was okay.
Yeah. Got it, so.
You guys good?
These are just things to make sense. Portable, that So here, I don't have any idea. We're not here.
The last line is, we should be.
Yeah. It gives you the complete script. So I think
So,
figure out like.
let's.
We,
Actually, my end, you're right, like,
I'll send you, if you want to just add slides to it, and then you can that's pretty abstract. You'll see it's like, how to Take about 5 minutes to finish this up. Try and get onto a second page if you can.
Oh, yeah, there's more to that.
This is not
On my thing, I think, it's your life.
Yeah, which is exactly what I'm
Major yearly events.
and we were
That to me tells me exactly what search.
Yeah.
If I just search that.
We want to get over bad, we want to get bad. I would be on lifetime, it was my life. And also,
That's it.
Okay, 3 minutes.
We're just
Do we know for a fact all of them?
Good job, take one more minute. There's websites that show all
Okay, so
Yeah, we're at 30, well, we're at 32.
the next one.
Like they showed up in the URL, the title tag, and yeah. Not technique, it doesn't have any curating. I know this packet is you know, if you. There are.
Are you sure you're not?
I'm not just.
It's hard to say if you know.
Okay, let's finish up. Which one was done? So I want to share. All right, guys. So I want to have a few examples of this and go through it together so we can make sure we have a good understanding of it. This is one of the most fundamentally screwed up parts of on-page optimization. More people mess this part up than most any other SEO part of your website. By not having unique descriptions, by not having it specific to the keyword, the appropriate keyword that you're going after, by not really maximizing the benefit of the keyword on each page. This is a huge part of how Google determines what your site is, or what that page is, and whether it's relevant to what the user is searching for. And we didn't put a thing in here for body copy, because the body copy on the page can be all sorts of things, right? But all of these elements are opportunities for you to optimize your keywords and words in there. So that said, let's do maybe 3 or so different examples of these, and then we'll discuss a few more things, and then we'll pick up SEO when we get back. But I want to make sure that this part here, the on-page tag optimization, is something that we all walk away with tonight having a pretty good understanding of. So I'm going to clear this out, and I want one group. Does anyone have a e-commerce site that they did this for? We'll start with an e-commerce site. Any e-commerce sites out there that anyone did this for? Yes. What is it an existing site?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the site?
Lensimages.com.
Lensimages.com. Okay. Is there existing are there existing SEO tags on here that you found? Were you writing to improve them, or were you just analyzing what they were?
Most of it was existing, but there was some that we did improve.
Okay. So real quick, in less than 30 seconds, to remind us what this site is, and then let's start with one of your pages that you used.
Okay, so it's a stock photography agency that license, premium royalty free and rights managed still is in.
Okay, cool. So what is the page that you decided to start with?
Actually right there, collections.
Oh, collections, okay. So it's, where is that?
I mean, we did the homepage, and then we did, yeah, the homepage first, and then we did the collections page.
Okay, so on your homepage, it was blendImages.com. What did you do on the homepage for these tags?
Okay, so I mean, there were existing keywords, and there's just quite a few of them. I don't know if you want me to really list them off for you, or if you want me to say them out loud.
Well, how about this? If you were to have just started this site, what are the keywords that you would think are probably the most important? And then talk us through the tags, how you say that.
So, license, royalty-free photos, download stock images, photos online, pictures, ethnic photos, multi-ethnic imagery, Hispanic images, African-American photos.
Etc. Okay, so it's a lot of keywords right there, right? It's a lot of opportunity, but there's a lot of different things you could go off of. Now, that said, you can't put all of them into a title tag. You really only get 6 or 7 characters before it's cut off. So, without us actually looking at what they did, really, what did you feel is either the one they used, or if was that good or bad? If you were to redo it, kind of what would that lead you to for a title tag?
I don't know if that's how we would redo it, because it was definitely like a ... But the existing title tag is blend images, kind of like a vertical line, and then you have a space, vertical line, and it's multicultural, stock photography, comma, ethnic royalty-free, comma, rights managed photos, which are 2 different important product lines.
Yeah. So notice here in the title tag that currently exists, remember you only get about 60 to 70 characters before it's cut off, right? So in this case, it's blend images. They start with the actual brand name. They made a choice to put this first, right? And a very typical thing is going to be this divider, or like a colon is very typical as well. So the only thing they get to here is multicultural stock photography, comma, ethnic. So then the question maybe to you is this the most important keyword for this entire, for the homepage, the top level of the site? Okay. So there, and then let's see what the actual. Right. So multicultural stock photography, ethnic, royalty-free, and rights managed photos. So let's do some two-way analysis elements. I hope anyone who did the SEO on that, and no one self-censored. But is ethnic royalty free? Don't consider anything else. Is there two-way relevancy on that term? If you're someone who's typing in ethnic royalty free, what types of things could be in, I mean, like videos, right? Articles, things that are copyrighted in general, like artwork and all that. And so there's a lot of things that may not have anything to do with photography. So this is a place where we might recommend. This first one is great. This first term fits this two-way relevancy. The second term, we don't know if this has to do with stock images, perhaps. Now, rights managed photos, probably maybe a little bit more relevant if that's a term that people are looking for. So it's kind of like they're halfway there. So just something to consider. I would take whatever your second most important term is. That is also kind of separate from the multicultural stock photography. Because Google will find terms that are related, that are really closely related to that.
So it's the ethnic that you think is probably not necessary to repeat that.
Well, it could be, because the word ethnic is generally different, and Google may not make the connection. But more importantly, we don't know that this is, unless Google makes a connection between royalty-free and stock photos, we don't know that this term is related to stock photography. It might try and connect these two together, but it may not consider them together if it's separated here. Yes?
So for the title tag, you still want to be putting a multitude of phrases like this?
You could, but you need to realize you want to test it and make sure, like, if it's
like over 60 or 70 characters, you can put it in there, and this is not a bad title tag, just realize that nobody's gonna see it.
Right.
So this is only signal to Google. Now, I wouldn't have something that's like incredibly long, like I wouldn't have something that's 150 characters long, because Google may consider that to be spammy. Like I wouldn't put an entire description paragraph in there, but, where did that go? I'm not sure where that went. Okay, anyway, so let's take this further though. So the homepage, right? We obviously know what the URL is. What about the H1? Did you have an H1 tag on this page?
No, there really wasn't an H1 tag. So we felt like it should, yeah, there's a little, just like the logo. We're in the middle of like a whole, so we would definitely have an H1 tag, and I feel pretty clear of like what that would be.
Yeah, and then let's see what the description is. Blend images, multicultural commercial stock photography, specializes in ethnic lifestyles, business, medical, and educational imagery for advertising, affordable, royalty-free, rights managed. Did you like that description, or would you change it to something else?
For the most part, I mean, royalty-free is typically less expensive than rights managed, which is more of like a higher-end product. So I probably would add something else, that maybe use the word premium for both, just instead of affordable, say premium royalty-free and rights managed.
Yeah, and really the description is designed to be for people as well as have a thing in there. So if multicultural stock photography is kind of your main thing here, then you could decide to keep the word commercial in there, you might take it out, you might keep it. If it's accurate, then definitely, but the words are in here, right? The words are in this relatively brief description. So the person who did this was generally thoughtful about it. Let's go to a second page, and then we'll go to a second example of work on it. What was another page different from that? What do you remember?
Collections.
Okay, so the collections page. Let's go back and click on collections. Okay, without considering what they did, what was the keyword that you would consider for this collections page?
Images, licensing models, quality, price, stills, kids, Chinese, lifestyle, architecture, collections.
So, I think that while all of these could theoretically be part of a category of that, a lot of them don't necessarily fit that two-way relevancy. Like if you were to search for quality or price as just generic words, the site itself, that specific offering may not be exactly what someone just typing kids is looking for. So thinking about keywords is what is like one keyword, like one word maybe, that could really represent what's on this page. Maybe it's something like multicultural stock photography collections or something like that that accurately represents what's on there. And you may have to do keyword research to look at this. But once you identify that keyword, let's use an example and say multicultural stock photo collection, right? That may not be the word you use, right? But let's go further though and say, once you did collection, did you come up with a title tag URL H1 for these?
Yes. So the title tag was blend images dash collections.
Okay, and URL?
Let's see.
They probably just did collections, right?
Is it even clearer than that? It was blendImages.com/collections by SHTML.
Okay. So you don't necessarily have to do this, but one thing that you could do is add, let's say it was multicultural stock photo collection or whatever. You could say something like, because this is the main place, right? The collection is really where they go. If you were focusing really on getting this keyword, it could be blendImages.com, multicultural photo collections afterwards. It doesn't really matter what's afterwards. Most of the time the user is not going to be negatively impacted as long as it's pretty reasonable there. Collections, even if it just said stock photo collections, that could work.
If you want to go even further, like let's say, I know that this site doesn't really go the exact same way as the other one, but let's say, let's go to collections. Rights managed. So, oh yeah. So notice what they do here, right? So blendedimages.com/collection/rights manage, right? Another thing they could do here is rights manage stock photos, or whatever. Or something like that that connects with whatever term that they're using on the page, right? Let's go further though. So let's say you either do with collections or you actually connect it with a keyword and you do like a multicultural stock, et cetera, right? With something like collections, what do they use for their H1 tag? Is it just collections?
I don't think there was an H1 tab, was there? There was an H2, so the H2 tab was collections.
But there is no H1 tag. Opportunity. So every one of these things we're talking about is an opportunity to, once you've picked a keyword that has two-way relevancy and really matches what the user is looking for, is to start developing each one of those content pieces around it. Now this is a slightly more niche type of stock photo site, so they're not going to focus every single page maybe as specifically as like a nice stock or a get image or whatnot, but there's definitely an opportunity there. And then your meta description is going to be something that's more descriptive, probably using a lot of those initial keywords that you have on. Let's, I want to move on to another example though. Is there anyone that did something that wasn't an e-commerce site that you could look at? I'm guessing most of the other ones. Non-e-commerce site example. Something to choose. Anyone? Yeah, absolutely. All right, existing site.
It's Western Garden. Garden Western.
Sorry, I couldn't make that up. What was it?
Garden West existing. It's pretty sad.
I didn't hear what the URL was.
Garden West.
GardenWestDental.com.
It's your fault.
No, it isn't. I took it like that.
Okay,
This is how it was.
so this is a local dental office or set of offices, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go beyond the home. Did you guys do something that wasn't the homepage?
Yeah, we did the services page, but really based on what she's working on, so like, seeing what she's doing.
Okay.
Well, I don't think we followed this one.
We worked on a new thing on Squarespace. Does that count for something?
Sure, yeah. We probably can't see it, right?
We can.
Okay, well, let's just kind of follow, go down this rabbit hole for a bit.
Basically, it's what's like the logo services here, but the difference is here you don't have like a tab for everything that like explains what every service is or like visually.
Are they different pages for each service?
On the view tab, yes.
Okay, so we know that what you're doing is you're building a site with a specific page for each service, right? So, did you do one mock-up for different one of the services? What was the example you used? Let's go back.
Just for all the services.
Okay, all right, so what would be a keyword that you guys came up with for dental services?
Well, we did a phrase, dental and orthodontic services in garden grove.
And the majority of customers in Garden Grove.
Well, yeah, we figured no one would really travel long distance just to see a dentist. They don't really like dental work to be done. So you don't even want to wait.
Right.
Add after we do it.
So this is a good strategy for a local business because there are so many providers that just writing like dental and orthodontics, you're already going to get picked up by using this type of keyword, but you're getting really specific with where it is. You'll have the Google My Business, which knows where your business is. So just based on someone's IP address, if they type in, dental and orthodontics, you're going to potentially come up in that area. But also by using the term in your copy and in your different locations, in the different tags and whatnot, you'll have an additional opportunity to show up for those things. So what did you guys use for your title tag for this?
Dental and orthodontic services.
And
Does Google know that dental and dentist is the same? Or
Yeah, if you were to
does
type that
dentist
into-
also need to be in everything that's done?
so you'll probably use combinations of those words throughout your copy, but if I were to type in dentist into the keyword planner, it would come up with dental. Right, so, I don't know exactly how many characters this is, but we might want to do something like West End dental, at least get started in there, or you can say, right, so there's an opportunity to throw it in there. If you want to, if it's relevant, there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but the point is that you're getting that one keyword that kind of fits the entire area, right? And so with the URL, you've got a few options to do this. What did you guys come up with?
We just did cardwithdental.com type of services.
So, this is one of those places where it might not hurt a user to add the user keyword again. You've already got dental in there, but you don't have anything about orthodontic in there, right? So it's possible, what I might suggest doing something like dental orthodontic services in there, right? You get the benefit of dental in the URL, but not all the time you have a business that has the actual keyword right in the URL, and it can become a great opportunity to have the two words in there that they care about, which are, it's still services, but it's dental orthodontic services. If you saw that URL, you didn't look at anything else, you saw cardinaldental.com, dental orthodontic services, would you expect to see that type of page when you got there? Right, so you're signaling, and it's gonna be bolded as well in the search results. It may not, it might have a dot if it's too long. I don't remember how long the URL one is, but this might, you would probably still see dental and orthodontic in there if you didn't see services. So. Another,
Also, ellipses inside the URL too.
they do sometimes, yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes you'll see the ellipses if there's a long URL, so it shows the actual keywords for relevancy, so that's another thing to consider. Another example where this came up, with a client that I worked with was, they were a production company. There was a production company, that, it was something like abc.com, but it didn't say production company afterward. And they did a thing where they just wrote services afterwards. And if it was like abc.com/services, you wouldn't necessarily know that they were a post-production company, right, in Los Angeles. And there's a lot of them here, so SEO is very, and sometimes be important for them. So rather than doing that, we wrote post-production services. And even though their company didn't show up, local here, that's what it was. So it was localheropost.com. Now, Google doesn't know that Local Hero Post is a post-production company. It doesn't associate the word post with post-production all the time. So what we did was we added post-production services as their URL. And then they started to actually show up when people were looking for like local post-production services or post-production service Los Angeles, which was a common search that was coming up. And instead of coming up 0 times, they came up multiple times in a given month whenever that search came up, and they got some clients that way. So whenever you can, look for an opportunity to get your keyword in there. What would you guys use for an H1 tag on this page?
Services.
Services? So again, that's another opportunity. You can use the word dental and orthodontic services in that form. And then your meta description can be an elongated description of that kind of thing. You can use the Garden Grove, located in Garden Grove, California, complete orthodontic services. You can even list them. If you actually went to one of those services pages, like what's a dental procedure that typical like an orthodontic procedure that you like?
Colors, well, orthodontic procedures are just braces, basically,
Yeah.
but with dental, a lot of things have teeth whitening, color pills, cleaning, veneers, cosmetic dentistry.
Right.
Implants, very clean.
So let's say we go with teeth whitening, right? Your title tag could be, of course, teeth whitening and website and dental. And if it were, it could be
keep weight in garden growth. Another way to continue to leverage that location. Your URL could be gardengrowth.com/keep whitening service. Your H1 tag would be keep whitening service, etc. So there's all sorts of, and then you could write a description on that fits in there. The point is that every single page is going to have its own keyword that you want to use in your tags and in your copy as well. Does it make sense? Are there any questions on how to use these tags in there? Okay. Sure. I'll clean this up a little bit and send it out. Next time we're going to pick up with SEO. We're going to move on to things like analytics, how it's shown in analytics and webmaster tools, as well as some link building strategies to get third parties to link to your site and build up your popularity in the eyes of Google. And for next week, we are going to start search Google AdWords. So if you haven't already and you want to, feel free to sign to log in or create your Google AdWords account and use that gift card. The link to use is in the homework folder, has a link to that promotion. If you sign up
Anything
outside of
else?
that
I mean,
promotion,
are you like clear on what you want to do yet, or do you still want to explore that?
this Thursday.
Let's sit down. Like, let's explore
We're
that.
gonna start
Or
Next office
next off time.
Yeah,
Okay.
6 o'clock. I'll be here.
6 o'clock Thursday. All right, let's do it. All right. In the meantime, kind of like come up with the concept, like what you want to do, and then. But no, we'll overdo it. Okay.
So my recommendation is 2 guys.
Yes.
When I logged into Google AdWords, it's trying to get me to set up a campaign. So I'm not, is that how it's supposed to go?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, but if you, that's okay. So
Like I'm not seeing another way to just go to Google AdWords.
Thanks, guys.
all right. I'll talk to you soon. Yeah. Bye. Let's see. This is a new format because it used to be able to like you can go in again like he was saying the new way is that it requires specific billing information. So yes, so like let's say you don't this isn't like you're not gonna have to pay for it or anything like that. But if you like let's say like $5 per day, 46 clicks. And then I would like just go through this.
I want to make sure that this wasn't like that it meant that I already had it because the company already went through and gave me access to some of their accounts, but I wasn't sure if
Then you can choose like this is cool. I haven't seen this before. Wow.
to work for me. Okay.
No, this is so new that this is very new. Now they're giving you suggestions. That's really cool. It makes it a lot easier for you. And they're showing you like the search popularity.
But like he was saying, you don't always necessarily want to go with what's most popular.
Yeah, that's why you go in, we do the research, and we see like based on your again geography, like cost per keyword, the volume. If it's too much, if there's too much of a volume for it, and it's expensive, there's people that are bidding like high dollar amounts for that. So doing more like long tail keyword research is essential because it's not it'll take a while, but identifying terms that are still relevant people are still using, like we were talking about the office chair, right? Not relevant. I mean, it is relevant. It's you know, it's another word for office chair, but who's really searching for it. So finding that sweet spot is what you want to do, and a term that's also widely used, but still relevant, and it's still used, like, you know, as like leading indicators.
Yeah.
So let's say, I mean, I don't know, let's say, where would you consider it like wearable technology?
Yeah. I would, yeah. But I don't know that if I was a biker, I'd search for that. But maybe super techie ones would.
What would, in your opinion, like for example, and this is an exercise you have to do, is like, what words or what terms are they using to search for this kind of product? And because it's such a new product, because there's not a lot that they like, and I'm sure there's products like maybe.
I mean, I did like simple phrase searching, like helmets with bike lights, and it came up. So even that would be, I think, a phrase that I could use.
Yeah, because there's, and I'm sure people are searching for bike lights, obviously bike owners. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to be like, oh, this is cool. Like instead of.
I guess that would be a good one to come up with, actually,
Yeah.
because.
But again, how many people are searching for bike lights? And if you really want to compete with that market, you have to understand that they're maybe not looking for apparel. Although it is a solution, you know, the intent isn't 100%, right? And so understand, just, you know, keeping that, considering that. But let's say, I mean, just for, let's use like cycle lights, for example.
And these, obviously, you can always change these, right? This is just to like get into the.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're traveling in New York.
Oh, so these are already selected for you. Okay, cool. Set your
You're gonna
grid.
see subway locations on your phone that are actually near where you are.
Automatically set your
Not
grid
just
to
from like.
yeah, that's always the best.
So-
And then again,
For SEO purposes, part of it is, there's two things. First off, your Google My Business account, which you should definitely have as a local service, will help to show that your physical location is near like where users are. Then maybe set up a Google My Business,
Okay.
right? But also you want to
this,
specify
and then-
in your website probably in different ways. So, you know, putting your contact information.
Okay, and that's where I'd put in.
Maybe he's talking about like.
yeah, your billing information, and then like I really don't know what comes in your review. I don't know if you have to launch it or you can just save it. And then once you're past that, then you can get into like,
Look at what he was looking at.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay,
Keyword research and all the researching tools and all that stuff.
okay,
Yeah.
cool.
But yeah, that's the only downside. Ask Jordan about what comes after that or what's safe to do, actually, because he's probably used it.
Okay.
The last time I ran a campaign was before they made all the changes on this.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, thank you. I hope that was like somewhat clear.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I just want to make sure I wasn't gonna launch a campaign.
Yeah, yeah, that's why you should probably check and Jordan.
Yeah.
I don't want like to go. And then, well, at least you said it $5 a day. So that's-
Yeah.
Well, and some of them are gonna be better at a strategic website than